This is Twisted Passages with award-winning author Marie Sutro. Now, let's take a deep dive into the dark world of psychological thrillers and meet the authors who created them.
Hello, and welcome to Twisted Passages. I'm your host, Marie Sutro, and today we'll be talking to the New York Times bestselling author of over 60 books, the incredible, the incomparable J.A. Jance, about her new release, Den of Iniquity. Welcome, J.A.
Thank you. I'm really happy to be here.
I am absolutely beyond ecstatic. I don't know if I'm actually sitting or if I'm just floating in this chair right now because I get to talk to you. But this was another one of your absolutely incredible reads. Can you start us out just with a quick overview of what Den of Iniquity is about?
Actually, there are two separate mysteries in this book, but the overriding one is Beau is a retired cop who is working as a mostly freebie private eye. When somebody asks for help, he gives it. And in this case, he is summoned by a grandmother whose grandson died of an apparent fentanyl overdose. And she says, no, no, no. He was living with me. He was clean and sober. His death is not an accidental overdose. And so Beau gets sucked in and he discovers that there are several related cases where the death was dismissed as a fentanyl overdose and no subsequent investigation revealed otherwise. Part of my motivation for writing this book is the fentanyl statistics are awful. But they're statistics. And in this book, some of those statistics stop being numbers and start being people with families, with kids, with economic impact, with long-term losses and long-term heartaches. And in the course of writing this book, I could feel my mind changing about how all those nameless statistics are pictured as well. The other part of the mystery has to do with Beau's personal life. You know, he and I have been together as author and character since 1983. And I actually gave him my birthday so I would be able to remember how old he is. And by the way, we'll both be turning 80 next month, but who's counting? However, when I started with Beau, he was a middle-aged homicide cop, divorced, mostly estranged from his family, and he had a real drinking problem. Well, 4 books in, my reader said, "Hey, does J.P. Beaumont have a drinking problem?" And I said, "These are books." But actually, I patterned his character after my first husband, who died of chronic alcoholism at age 42. So I patterned him after a problem drinker, and I did so accurately that my readers figured it out before I did. And that's how Beau eventually goes into treatment. So he's changed over the years. He's now in his third marriage to a wonderful woman named Mel Soames. They live in Bellingham, where she's the chief of police. They have a lovely home. So Beau is out. It's Valentine's Day 2020. He comes back. There's a strange car in the yard. And then the door opens. This long drink of water steps out, and it's his grandson, his 18-year-old grandson. There's trouble in Ashland. His parents are getting a divorce. His father has moved his pregnant girlfriend into the house. And Kyle has come to Bellingham to ask if he can live with Grandpa and Grandma and finish his senior year in high school. Hello?
That's a big ask when you just show up on the doorstep, right?
No, this is not just part of the fun of writing this book was watching those three people try to negotiate the generation chasm between Mel and Bo and 18-year-old Kyle. And the book is set at the beginning of right before the pandemic hits. So Bo is stuck trying to get through the pandemic, trying to get Kyle settled in. One of the running jokes in this book is kids that age have never met a stick shift. And so when Bo's neighbor gets a Shelby, Kyle is all excited about the Shelby. And Bo looks at him and says, they came out in the 60s. How do you even know Shelbys? And Kyle said, well, haven't you ever seen Ford versus Ferrari?
It was so great how you used all of those elements and brought them together in ways, even when they start talking about 78s and, you know, the history of drum sets and all of these things. And the beauty that you showed that just because there are generational differences, people are still people and they're still drawn together by these common themes and shared passions, no matter what age you are. And I loved how you did that. I loved the intergenerational play. It was so beautiful because there's so many times in life where people walk away from those relationships because they think they're not easy. Oh, well, I can't talk to this person because they're 30 years younger than me, or I can't talk to that person because we have nothing in common. They're 40 years older. Well, all you have to do is scratch the surface and everybody's got a lot in common.
Yes, that is true. But one of the things that I don't outline. I'm kind of an instinctual storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Bo is all caught up in his problem, he comes home and Mel is having a very serious police chief problem because one of the teachers at the high school has been a music teacher, has been molesting girls. So I wrote that scene, and it was after I had written it that I realized where it came from. In high school, Bisbee High School, my sophomore year, I was in the girls' trio. So for that class, there were 3 girls and the accompanist. And Mr. Payne began teaching us how to breathe. So we talked it over. And we decided we were going to quit. So I quit girls' trio and spent the next 2 years in band. The other girls stayed in girls' trio, presumably learning to breathe. And, you know, in Den of Iniquity, I got even with that guy.
In the way that only crime writers can.
Don't make crime writers mad.
You know, that you just touched on something that kind of was the tip of an iceberg that really got me so much in your book, got me thinking about so many big issues. But this was one in particular because you showed us that teacher as a male engaged in that kind of a horrific crime. But then you also gave us a female involved in the same crime. And it was very interesting because you kind of touched on the fact, and it's something we all know in society, is that there is a difference between the way people commonly perceive males who are abusing children versus females. And I thought it was such an important compare and contrast because it is still an issue where people kind of just think women don't do that, but they do. And, sometimes people think, oh, well, they won't do it again. Was that your intention, to show both sides of the coin in that?
That was an accident.
Oh.
By the way, during the pandemic, I did make one very ill-fated batch of chicken curry.
Curry? I was wondering, and were
Mel's
the eyes watering for everyone? Was it
eye-watering chicken curry.
Okay.
Indicative of that.
Okay. And for those out there who don't know, you will have a wonderful, wonderful experience when you get to the chicken curry, because it is highly laugh worthy and highly relatable. And I think during the pandemic, we were all making things that we didn't normally make. There was a lot of ill-fated recipes coming to the fore. You also mentioned that Beau is in Bellingham. Can you explain a little bit about Bellingham for people who have never been there? Because I only discovered it in the last few years, and it is on my top places to go. I absolutely adore it. All my friends and family know that Bellingham is just, and then the Fairhaven district. Oh my goodness, it is a magical place.
Well, most of my experience with Bellingham has been in the Fairhaven district doing signings at Village Books.
Yes.
But when I needed a place for Mel to be police chief after shit ran out, shit being the Special Homicide Investigation Team,
which happens to have a hysterical acronym as a name.
Some guy wrote to me from Utah and he said, I've worked for our attorney general here, and if he had a sense of humor, that would be the name of our cold case.
I'm sure it's a very relatable acronym for a lot of folks doing that work. And, that was another thing, for those of us who love Beau, we've been with him so long. Over the course of his lifetime, he's been through so many things, and he's shown us multiple glimpses of family and multiple realities of family just through his own experiences. And he's really in a place now where this grandson is on his front doorstep, and he's getting a chance to parent in a way, right? Because there's not that.
Never did.
Exactly.
Back then.
Exactly. And so seeing him in that way, and for you to test him in those ways, and to see the beauty of the experience coming in so many times when he's advising his grandson or dealing with his daughter, that was so incredibly powerful. Did you ever imagine that when you started out with this middle-aged guy, that he would become this sage person who'd be able to really have a patriarchal role in that way? That's really beautiful and loving.
When I wrote Until Proven Guilty, I thought I was writing a standalone book. I had no idea it would turn into a series, not the foggiest notion. So it has been really, it's been an amazing journey to travel through all these years with him and see cops don't get over things either. And so when his partner dies in a domestic violence, a homicide cop who dies of domestic violence in betrayal of trust, that's what propels him out of Seattle PD. But in Nothing to Lose, books later, he is helping one of the boys, the surviving son of that partner, find out what happened to his brother. And so again, family matters, and the after effects of crimes matter. In Den of Iniquity, he needs to find out, he needs to know which cases to investigate. And he doesn't, he looks at the number and he says, I don't have any way of doing this. And then he's referred to a lady named Yolanda Aguirre, who is a forensic economist, and she's doing research to study the long-term familial, social, financial impacts of these fentanyl deaths. In high school, in homeroom, Yolanda Aguirre was in the A's and Judy Busk was in the B's. She was against the windows, I was against the blackboards. And we never were really that close in high school. But over the years, she became a big fan of my books. And so when I was about to name my forensic economist, I sent Yolanda a note and said, would you mind if I used your name in this book? And I didn't hear back from her, and I just kept writing. And I thought, well, if she says no, I can change the name. And then when I was almost finished with the book, I heard from her daughter, who said that she had passed away from a sudden stroke. And so Yolanda Aguirre is still the forensic economist in this book, and the book is also dedicated to her.
That is absolutely beautiful. The fact that you sat together day after day and that relationship never quite grew, but through your art, you touched her and you're able to give such a beautiful honor to her is really awesome.
Someone said to me the other day, you write murder mysteries. How can they be uplifting?
Well, believe it or not, there's lots of ways. One of them is in making us understand ourselves better, I think. And you touched a little bit also on trauma and how it stays with police officers. And one of the parts I thought that was, it was just a small line. It was one little line in the whole book. But it really stood out to me when Beau comes back from reviewing evidence from prior cases, and he has watched a surveillance video. And just in the by of, I think it was at dinner, Mel just said, that must have been tough to watch this person who you knew was walking out in something bad and you knew what was going to happen to them. That must have been tough. And she can relate to that. That concept of the toll it takes, not just on the police officers, but on the evidence. The folks who are in charge of keeping evidence, they know what they have in there lots of times. You know, there's a weight to this. Court reporters, so many people. I always think about, you know, the DNA techs, even if they just get the sample, they know what they're testing, right? And what they're looking for. You've been at this a long time. Do you think as a society we need to do more to support the folks who are involved in the criminal justice system to give them more resources? Because it does take a toll.
Absolutely. Those people are carrying such a heavy burden, and we only focus on the bad ones. We never focus on the good ones who come to work day after day for little and no thanks.
And it's kind of something that we do, I think, in society, because even the example of a teacher, you know, you gave the example in the book of the music teacher. When that hits the news, everyone thinks, oh, these teachers, you know, that do these things. But what about the teachers who are showing up every day spending
Aren't.
money on school supplies or helping kids get food. And, what about all those people who are barely making it by, who never get to go on a real vacation? It's something we do. I'm not sure why as human beings that we enjoy that so much, but I think it's hard for us to look at the good. I don't know why.
Well, I agree with you wholeheartedly about that. And I like to think that my books show police officers doing everything they can to fix the problems. Actually, talking about Den of Iniquity is a bit of a problem for me right now because on Monday of this week, I finished writing By Reason of Insanity, which is the next Joanna Brady book. And by the end of this week, I'll have the copy edited manuscript for Overkill, the next Allie Reynolds book. So we're talking about a book that I wrote 2 years ago when my head is full of characters from 2 more books. So if I don't sound like I'm making sense, please forgive me. I try to make it sound as though I actually wrote the book.
No, it feels like you just typed the end yesterday. So kudos to you that you can keep all those characters and plot lines straight in your head. One of the other things I wanted to ask you about, again, crime fiction, you've been at it a while. You've done extensive research. One of the things that comes up in this novel is witness protection. And you do educate us a bit about it. And it's not what everybody thinks it is on TV, as it's played out on TV and in movies, is it?
Yeah, those people are dumped. Those people are dumped in faraway places where they have no support system, no visible means of support. They have no friends, no relatives. And that I read an article about what inspired that was an article written by a young woman who had gathered together a group of young people who had been dumped into witness protection. Until you brought it up, I had forgotten that was this.
That was in there.
But that was what inspired that because, you'll go into witness protection, you'll be fine. And you think, oh, they're going to be in a little house with a little white house with a yard and a picket fence. And they're not.
And if there's kids, they're going to be happier than they ever were, and they're going to be popular in their new school, and everything's going to be great. And
No, it's not going to be great. And they're going to be outsiders wherever they are. And these kids can't get passports. They witness protection is for the parents involved, but the kids are just dragged along and they are put through hell.
Thank you for putting a spotlight on that, because I truly, and I think most people don't know that. Most people see what's in popular culture and just assume that, oh, it's sad because you leave your old life behind, but wow, your new life is, so great.
Yeah, your new life is just going to be terrific.
Yeah. One big question I've always wanted to ask you. You do such a good job in all of your stories, leaving us in the end with hope. Hope that things can get better, hope that there's heroes out there who can make things better. They can't fix everything, but they can get as close as they can. Based on all the research you've done and all the characters you've explored, the word justice, we have a system in this country, other countries have other systems. Do you think victims or even communities who are victimized by crimes, do you think we ever really can get justice?
I think for a lot of people, all we can get is answers. Even if someone is convicted, no amount of prison time is actually going to fix the problem, because the person who's dead is dead forever. And but we can give the families answers about who did it for some of these long unsolved cases. For some of them, the person is held accountable by being sent to prison. But again, that doesn't really fix it. The family members who are still grieving 30, 40, 50 years later.
Well, I kind of suspected that might be your answer because Bo has some thoughts about that at one point when he's thinking of the original person who brings in that primary case that you mentioned. And he looks at what he did around that original case. And he said, okay, well, there was a conviction and there were all these things, but did it really get the victims what they needed? They're just left with it. And we're all just left with it in the end.
But I like is the last line in that story when he is to go to the various families, and the last one they go to is the mother, is Darius's grandmother, and she says something about thank you for giving Benji that teddy bear. And they get in the car, and the other cop looks at him and says, "What teddy bear?" And he says, "That's a long story."
Yes, that's why I was able to quote it with you. That line sat with me, and it was so beautiful and a good example of, sometimes, though we may not be able to bring the teeter-totter back into full balance again after a crime has been committed, just those elements of one human being reaching out for another and not forgetting and still remembering and wanting that justice for them as if it was their own family member. That's the beauty of what these folks do every day. It's the beauty of what you do by bringing us these stories.
Well, it is something I've loved doing for 40 years, and at some point they will pull my gnarled fingers off the keyboard and I'll be over. But right now I'm still having lots of fun.
Wonderful. Now, one quick more question for you. With everything you've done, everything you've accomplished, all the lives you've touched, all the readers whose hearts you've set on fire with your stories, is there anything that you haven't written? I discovered your poems recently and fell in love. Is there any genre out there or anything out there that you've ever thought, I would like to try writing fill in the blank?
Well, when I was in 5th grade, somebody gave me a little diary, a little paint blocking driveway, and you were supposed to write a paragraph for every day. I didn't make it through the first week. But 10 or 15 years ago, I started writing a blog, and it publishes every Friday. My website is jajanceauthor.com, and the blog publishes at jajance.com/blog. And that offers a window on my life. And sometimes it's what happens in my life that week. Sometimes it's about writing. Sometimes it's about growing up in Bisbee. Sometimes it's, and what I've what I really value about that is every Friday after the blog comes out, I get to read through the comments and see what in that blog has resonated with the people and the memories of their own lives that piece of writing has elicited. And so I guess essay writing is something I always wanted to try, and now I do.
Well, I am so glad. I didn't realize you had one. So I will be going to your website and I will be reading it. It must be such a joy to have that immediate feedback because, as you said, with Den of Iniquity, you have to wait 2 years to hear people's feedback to your work.
Well, if you enjoy the blog, you can read back through the archives. It's sort of like getting my autobiography in weekly installments.
Weekly installments.
So read the blog. And I want to hear a comment from you.
You will probably have many. That's where the fangirl stuff, like I've been containing, but then it'll just get crazy on the blog. So get ready. Get ready on there. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure talking to you today. And is the blog and the website the best place for your fans to find you?
Yes, yes, it is. I respond to emails. My contact information is available on the website, and I respond to every single email. I think it's important.
That's phenomenal as Den of Iniquity. Your current fans, if there's anyone out there, and I don't know that there could be anyone out there who's not a fan of yours yet, are going to absolutely love this. Anyone who hasn't even read the series, you can pick this up just like all of J.A. Jance's series work. And you are so good at just bringing us into the characters and feeding slowly the backstory. So it's okay if someone hasn't read every single one leading up, but they will definitely want to go back and get caught up. Again,
it's all in print.
All in print, exactly. A joy. Again, J.A. Jance, it has been a pleasure and a bit of a dream come true to talk to you today.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been fun.
Thank you. And thank you all for joining us on this episode of Twisted Passages. We hope to see you next time.